Hey guys, and welcome to The Broken Sword. In today's video, we will be talking about the most mysterious of the Rings of Power, the 7 rings that were given to the dwarves. Let's get into it.
Build me a army worthy of Mordor.
So, the Rings of Power were 20 magical rings that were forged during the Second Age, made with the purpose of Sauron having a way to seduce the rulers of Middle-earth to evil. 19 of these 20 rings were forged by the elves of Eregion, led by Celebrimbor. These rings were then divided into 3 groups, 3 for elves, 7 for dwarves, and 9 for men. I'm sure you know how it goes. One additional ring was then created by Sauron himself. The plan was for the 19 other rings to somehow be connected to the power of the One, and their wearers would be controlled by the wielder of the One. Now, if you want to know more about the 1, the 3, or the 9, we have full videos on each of them, so be sure to check them out if you're interested. Now, let's begin with the distribution of the 7 rings. It's most commonly assumed that Sauron created the rings and then divided them between men, elves, and dwarves, as I just stated, but that's not actually the case. Sauron had originally intended for them to all be used to corrupt the elves. But after the creation of the One Ring set his plans into motion, the elves became aware of the situation and took off their rings. Though the 3 most powerful rings were kept hidden and secret, Nenya, Vilya, and Narya, the others were reclaimed. It was then that Sauron decided to attempt to corrupt both men and dwarves as well. Just as intended with his original plans, Sauron gave his so-called gifts to the dwarves for them to wear, then tried corrupting them using his One Ring, though once again his plan failed. It turns out that not only are the dwarves too hardy and resolute to be controlled and manipulated, but he also gave them to the strongest kings and lords of the race, making it even harder for them to be corrupted. So rather than fall into Sauron's dark magic, the Dwarven ring bearers accumulated great wealth. As the rings essentially intensified their greed, they became consumed by it. As the rings were likely given to the kings of the 7 houses of the dwarves, it was because of the 7 rings of power that the dwarves accumulated the 7 hordes of the dwarf kings. In case you are not aware of what these are, they were the legendary treasures of the dwarves. Each horde belonged to one of the dwarven clans. By the time of the Third Age, most of these hordes were plundered or devoured by dragons, who also had a liking for treasure. Due to the rings bringing in wealth and treasure, which in turn attracted dragons, it should come as no surprise to discover that 4 of the 7 rings were melted under the flaming breath of these dragons. However, Sauron managed to recapture the remaining 3 following his return to prominence. He made an attempt to use these 3 rings as a way of bribing the dwarves to pledge their allegiance to him. Of course, this offer was declined. But this begs the question, at least to me, why did Sauron even want these rings back? To just give them back out to dwarves he already knows are incorruptible? It doesn't really make much sense. Tolkien does say that the 7 rings failed to corrupt the Dwarven kings the way the 9 rings succeeded with the Nazgul. So I think it's reaching a bit far to suggest that the 7, as originally presented by Sauron to the dwarves, succeeded in turning any of their wearers to evil. The dwarves were especially resistant to the domination of their wills by an external will, but the rings did increase their greed, pride, and anger. So, having seized 3 of the 7, why would Sauron offer them to Dane Ironfoot at the end of the Third Age, as reported by Gloin at the Council of Elrond? If the offer was in fact sincere, we must wonder if Sauron had done something to the rings, perhaps hoping to succeed with them in a way he had not done before. It might also explain why Sauron would be willing to give out the 3 remaining rings to Dane. If he had further perverted the rings, perhaps he felt he would have a better chance of enslaving a Dwarven king the second time round. If the dwarves could be united in war once more, Sauron would much have preferred to have them fighting for him than against him. But as we know, the rings were never gifted out again and presumably were destroyed when Barad-dûr collapsed, or at the very least, they likely lost all of their powers when the One Ring was destroyed. Now, I want to talk briefly and more specifically about one of the 7 rings. In fact, it's the only Dwarven ring that we ever really get any specific information about, the Ring of Thror. It's actually said that this ring was originally given out by Celebrimbor himself. He gave it to King Durin III of Khazad-dûm. It remained then in the House of Durin for thousands of years, all the way up to the desolation of the Lonely Mountain by Smaug, and at this time the ring was now with Thror. After the kingdom's destruction, Thror passed the ring on to his son Thrain, Eventually, Thrain set out on an ill-fated quest to regain his kingdom, but he was captured by the spies of Sauron, and the Ring of Thror was lost forever, as Sauron took it from him by force in the dungeons of Dol Guldur. Many dwarves, however, did not know the fate of the ring and thought it was lost in Moria when Thror was killed by Azog. It was actually thought that one of the reasons that Balin wished to reclaim Moria was to find this ring. In the Council of Elrond, Gandalf told Gloin that Balin would not find the ring there as it was given to Thrain and lost in Dol Guldur. Now, that's pretty much all of the information we have on the 7 Rings of Power. As I said, it's one of the areas that Tolkien wrote very little about, but these are often the areas I find most fun to dissect because we can speculate and theorize and piece it together and try and find a full story. The majority of the information we are really given about these rings is summarized in one paragraph from the Silmarillion in the chapter of the Rings of Power. I will leave you today by reading you this passage. And all those rings that he governed he perverted, the more easily since he had a part in their making. And they were accursed, and they betrayed in the end all those that used them. The dwarves indeed proved tough and hard to tame. They ill endure the domination of others, and the thoughts of their hearts are hard to fathom, nor can they be turned to shadows. They used their rings only for the getting of wealth, but wrath and an overmastering greed of gold were kindled in their hearts, of which evil enough after came to the prophet of Sauron. It is said that the foundation of each of the 7 hordes of the dwarf kings of old was a golden ring, but all those hordes long ago were plundered and the dragons devoured them, and of the 7 rings, some were consumed in fire and some Sauron recovered. Okay, that's it from me today, my friends. I hope you enjoyed that final passage to really summarize the full story of the 7 Dwarven Rings of Power. My question for you all today is this: if you could have a Dwarven Ring of Power for yourself, would you take it? Knowing that you will become extremely rich from it, but also be consumed with greed, always wanting more. Do you think that's a sacrifice worth making? Let me know your thoughts on that in the comments down below. I think that's a really fun discussion to have. Please don't forget to check out our latest channel, The Batcave. The content there is very similar to what we do on here, but of course based around the Batman and DC universe. If you could go over and subscribe to that channel, maybe watch a few videos and let them know that the Broken Sword sent you, that would be very appreciated. Okay, time has come as always to thank our patrons. A big shout out goes to the members of the 3 highest tiers: Kevin, Abram, Matt, Nashith, Denver Steel, Gregory, John and Andrew. We can't thank you all enough for the support towards this channel and our short film. If you're interested in supporting yourself, you can do so via our Patreon page. There's a variety of tiers on there that you can choose from. Again guys, thank you for watching. I hope you have a great day and I will see you next time on The Broken Sword.
Build me an army worthy of Mordor.